Hi, and welcome to another Energetic Arts training session. Today's topic is simulation theory and why it may be useful to try on that mindset for a little while. So, as we get into this, notice that there is a chat feed, and feel free to uh, let me know if any problems with the sound come up, or if you have any questions at any time. Feel free to put them up there, and I'll do my best to address them if they're on track, and if not, um, I'm sorry, but we've got to get through this in a way that is going to get you the information that you've come here for. So, simulation theory generally. Hey, thanks for that. Hey, Peter, how are you? Um, Simulation theory generally, if you look on the internet and you've watched some videos, you'll see that the concept is that it's a possibility, or according to some people, a high probability that what we perceive as our reality is actually some kind of advanced computer virtual simulation. And whether this is a true an accurate depiction of how things work, or if it's just a theory, as it's suggested, it's useful for us, at least for certain things, to be able to try this idea on and to see if it can give us a bit more freedom in the way that we think and perceive our world, our reality. And so I mentioned in the earlier session this morning a good example, just to sort of give you some broad strokes on how to view this, is the idea of the round earth and flat earth theory. And so we went from a mindset back in the past where the earth was flat and it was the center of the universe, to now the earth is round according to Google Maps and all the pictures from the space programs. And now we're inside a solar system which is not even the center of the universe anymore. It's a part inside a galaxy which is made up of many galaxies, and on and on it goes. But the simulation theory, before we go there, and then now there's a whole group of people, the Flat Earth Society, that are saying maybe the Earth's really flat and we've all been lied to it. And it's really interesting how there's proof for both sides of the argument depending on what you're sorting for. And so that's the whole point, from my perspective at least, with the simulation theory, is that if you accept the idea that it's possible or probable that we're inside the simulation, like in the film The Matrix, then everything is up for grabs in terms of what's real. And so when we're trying this idea on, and we go back to the flat Earth, round Earth idea, there's no point really arguing for one side or the other, because if it's all a simulation, if we're playing with this idea, then both are true and both are wrong. And so what it really comes down to from then is how your mind is set up, because how your mind is configured is what you're going to perceive as true. And so if we continue a little bit further with the idea with the simulation theory, then we have to look at ourselves as a human being and say, okay, well, if most of what we perceive is happening through the brain and the nervous system, and that system is a closed box inside the skull that doesn't actually have any interaction with what we may or may not know is real, then through the ports of our eyes and our ears and our, olfactory nose and taste and our touch and the senses that we pick up through our nervous system, then this is just information. And as Morpheus would say, it's electrical signals into, and so these electrical signals come into our brain. They get processed in however they get processed based on the configuration of the mind that we have. And based on that configuration of the mind that we have, that's how we will perceive what we believe is out there in the environment, and we'll call that our reality, and that's how we'll interact with it. And so I used this example before once, and it happened again today actually. So I was walking through the park, and it was interesting because I saw this figure walking towards me that looked very it looked like a woman walking towards me, and even the mannerisms and the body posture seemed very female to me. And as I got closer and we were walking together, turns out that it was actually a guy. And so my mind just went, well, okay, that was what I thought was real wasn't actually real. And what came when it came into closer proximity to me, then the whole image flipped on its head. And so this can happen in all sorts of ways. And Jordan Peterson, who's got some amazing stuff to talk about, if you look at some of his videos, talks about when you go into the unknown, when you're confronted with that unknown for the first time, sometimes it can be so shocking in both good and bad ways. It can be very traumatic, or it can be very enlightening. And so when we're coming at our reality from this perspective, and we accept that it all could be an illusion, then when we look at our beliefs and our values and how our mind is made up and why it's made up that way, then we also have to accept that that could just be part of the program itself as well. And if we can accept that, then we come to this sort of idea that nothing is real, but it is real. And so if we go with that, then we can begin to change the thoughts that make up our mind, and change and alter and interchange those beliefs and create maybe new ones. Replace the values that those beliefs are attached to. And therefore, when the information comes into our mind, then we'll be projecting out a whole new signature into the field, and then we'll be broadcasting a whole new reality out there. And then we can interact with that reality in different ways. Is this making sense so far? Is everyone still with me? So what are some of the useful things that we can do with the adaptation of simulation theory? So putting aside whether it's true or not, and whether we should embrace this or not, let's just tinker with it for a minute. And so one thing we can do is we can use meditation as our laboratory. We can go in there and we can try on the idea and then play with it and see what sort of things we can do to have a new experience. And so when you get into, I think simulation theory is really useful because it lowers all those barriers that typically at the core coding level of our experience, we take for granted things like physics, things like time, things like space, things like how we communicate, things like connectedness and separation. And so, for me, one way I like to look at it that helps me really get into the space so we can start practicing is to start looking at it and take the technical gobbledygook out of it and start to look at it in terms of being more like a lucid dream. And so to get into this state of feeling lucid, we can start to change the frequency that our brain's operating from, going from a beta frequency, which is all thinking and logistics and all that, and move it down into an alpha state and keep our conscious awareness through that, and then slip into a theta state. And if we can slip into that theta state, then which is a dreaming state anyway, while staying conscious, then we can start to make that veil between the conscious unconscious mind a lot thinner, and we can start to move in there and start to interact with the dream. And so if you've ever had a lucid dream before, it's different from normal dreaming. In normal dreaming, at least from my experience, I'm fully immersed, whether it's nonsense or very realistic. The dream feels very different from one degree to another. And so when I'm immersed in the dream and I'm not aware that it's a dream, it feels very, very real. And when I wake up from that dream, it's only then that I notice that something was up. But when I'm dreaming and I'm lucid and I notice that it's a dream, it's a very, very different set of emotions that go with that. And immediately, at least in the beginning, you get very excited and you want to start to see what you can do inside that dream. Most people want to start flying, teleporting to other places, or changing the set and setting around them, or interacting with characters in the dream, which is really interesting because they're all part of you the dreamer, dreaming the dream. And so there's this real sense of freedom, I guess, that comes from this perspective, where you can start to really get into fantasy land and start to get into that kind of magical state that we used to be in naturally as kids. And then you can start to play with all sorts of things and see just how far you can push the envelope, I suppose. Or you could go the completely other way and just become a very keen observer of what's going on in the dream and what the subconscious is showing you. And sometimes it's very obvious, and sometimes it's very subtle. It takes a little while to decipher what's actually going on in there, to interpret your dream. But if we look at some of these great minds throughout history, like, for example, Carl Jung, who did a lot of work on the subconscious, his basic belief, his basic idea is that we're always dreaming all the time. And it's not really hard to, from my opinion, to confirm that. I mean, for example, can you count how many times as you're watching this that your mind slipped off and went somewhere else, whether it's to the future or the past, or you were just daydreaming about something else, or other emotions that were unrelated to what I was saying came up. A lot of the time, our focus slips in and out of these states, and our consciousness goes into all these different dimensions constantly. So that's pretty easy to to get there if you know what you're looking for. So just confirm with me, everyone, that you're still following along, because I know this is a bit of a out there topic. And then when I know that everyone's on board, we'll start a little bit. And if you have any questions before we drop in, now's the time to ask. Good. Cool. Okay. All right. So one of the reasons why I set up this as a training space, not just me talking to you, and you passively listening, is because we want to set up this environment where we can actually try this stuff out and see what experiences we can get from it. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to lead you into a relaxed state. The aim is to see if we can get our brain frequency to switch down into a nice relaxed state and go into hopefully probably the theta state, and still keep our awareness without falling asleep. And then when you're in that space and you're nice and warmed up and relaxed, I'm going to give you some suggestions to just remove some of those limitations from third dimensional restrictions, third dimensional living. And then I'm just going to give you some time in there to start to play with those new, what's the word I'm looking for? That new freedom that you have without those restrictions. So another way of looking at it before we drop in there is, if you look at quantum physics, you have the physical world, like you have your physical body, and then you've got layers beneath that. You've got your tendons and your muscles and your skeletal system and your nervous system, and beyond that you've got cells that make up all that. And if you go smaller again, you've got atoms and nuclei. Smaller again, you've got quarks and bosons, and smaller again, it goes all the way down to little vibrating strings of energy, so the theory goes. And so as we drop down these levels and you start operating from the level of, say, your energy, then the rules of physics at those levels, according to quantum theory, is that you have a lot more access to a lot more things. And if we're looking at we take, for example, the computer or the phone you're looking at this on. You've got this application that we're looking through. But if we go deeper into that, that's made up of script of code of whatever language, computer language it's in, and then maybe that was written from scratch, or maybe pieces were adapted from other programs, or maybe it was hacked together from several programs. And then if we go deeper again, it all goes down to ones and zeros. If we go deeper again, it all goes down to electrical current moving through the technology. And so depending on what level we're operating from, will determine what kind of impact and what kind of influence you can have and what's possible. Does that make sense? So as we go down these layers into frequencies, changing the brain frequency, you're going to have more access to more things. And so if we look at another example, we look at the light spectrum, and you have, most of what we perceive is in this tiny little band of light, and on the other side, it's invisible, but we can feel and sense the effects of those other energies in our life. So just gives you a bit of some handles when you get into that space. And then I'm going to bring you out. We're going to open it up to some questions. And I'll see if I can address anything. You can share your experiences. We can go into talking about your experiences a little bit if that's what you want to do. And then we'll wrap up, and then that'll be the session. And then, you can take that with you out into your day and play with it and see what things come up for you. So, I think I'm familiar with you guys now. You know what to do, so I'm hoping you've got your blindfolds with you and you're in a good, comfortable position. And so if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's begin. I'm going to start to play some music. And here we go. Sit back, relax, take a deep breath in and close your eyes. Just breathe and relax at your own pace. And in your own way. And as you breathe and relax even more at your own pace and in your own way. Notice the sensations inside your mind and inside your body. Slow down your breathing. And the slower you're breathing, the more you can begin to relax. And the more you can begin to relax, the deeper your breathing can become. Feel your energy now moving in and out of your body. Sense the energy moving into all those places inside your mind. Feeling calm, feeling relaxed. Let go just permission to change frequency. Allow yourself to dream. Becoming the dreamer. Dreaming. The dream. The more you realize that you're dreaming, the easier it is to wake up in the dream. So just dream now. About being the dreamer. Dreaming the dream. Go deeper now. Deeper in to the subconscious mind. We are not bound anymore by things like time and space. Feel your dream body becoming lighter. So light that you begin to float. breathe and relax even more. Release any tension you may still be holding on to. Let it go now. Just completely relax your mind and relax your body. And without any effort at all, just slip in to that new frequency. It's unrestricted and uninhibited. By all those limits. Where now you're unlimited. And are free to do whatever you want to do. In this time of timelessness. And in this space, between the spaces, allow yourself to play in this timeless time. In the spaciousness between spaces. Feel how good it feels feel freely whatever it is that you're feeling. Feel how good it feels to feel freedom of feeling. From this place, taking all those feelings with you. What is it that you can do now that maybe you didn't feel that you could do before? What connections in your mind have been made that you hadn't made before? What would it feel like if you could just float up off of the ground? What if you could just move from place to place without making a sound? Where would you go? What would you do? doing them in a whole new way. Allow yourself to dream. Tune in to that future with the feeling that you want to feel when you're there. Feel the feeling taking root and growing deep inside you. Let it change you. Let it align you. Let it show you what you can become. Slowly now, gently now, bring your awareness back to your body. Back to this time back to this place. Back to this space. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. How do you feel? What are you thinking? What are you feeling? What did you experience? Are you back? Oh, well, if you're still out there, stay out there. Keep going, keep playing. Beautiful. Anything new happen? Any new experiences? Anything you didn't expect? Yeah, cool. Look, switching frequency is a bit of a skill. It takes a bit of practice. Um, and I mean, part of it is becoming aware that you're doing it. Um, you know, we go in and out of different states of mind, different frequencies, in and out of trance states and altered states all the time. And it happens so often and so frequent that we stop paying attention to it. So part of it is being able to know when you're already doing it. This is the whole thing with these types of trainings and these mindsets that I'm introducing you to. It's to get you into a place where you're already there. It's not a place you need to get to by going over and through obstacles and blah blah blah, and it's not something you need to do anything to get to. It's just something you have to realize that it's already happening and drop into it. So don't beat yourself up if you didn't notice that you were already doing it the whole time. So do we have any questions? Or anything you want me to clarify or go into deeper? So, I mean, just like with changing frequency and not really sure if you're doing it or if you're not doing it, and maybe you're doing it but you think you're not doing it. It's a bit like in the lucid dream or the simulation theory idea is that and especially when you get into lucid dreaming training is when one of the techniques you practice very often is a wake up cue. So this is a simple little technique that you can practice like straight away. And it's one of those things that you become better with consistency, is just to ask the simple question, am I dreaming? And you do this several times a day. And, at first it's like, am I dreaming? You're just doing it out of habit. And you're like, no, I'm not dreaming. This is real. And then sometimes you slip into that different frequency and life gets a little bit malleable and, soft and pliable. And you begin to notice these synchronicities and these weird things happening that seem a little bit bizarre, like it could be a little bit dreamy. And when you ask yourself in those moments, am I dreaming? Sometimes the answer comes back yes. And like we said with Carl Jung, he believed that we were always dreaming, just at various degrees in the dream. And so, the idea is that possibly this frequency in the third dimensional space is just one density of the dream. And if we can tune our energy into different densities, different frequencies, then maybe the dream becomes a little more dreamy in some parts of the scale, or it becomes more real at other parts of the scale. And so it's useful not to be in this mindset of you're awake or you're dreaming, but maybe it's all sort of this in this spectrum, like the light spectrum, and you can move across the spectrum. And based on where you're orientated is based on what kind of possibilities are available to you. Is there a way to instantly get into this state by recalling a word or number, like being hypnotized? It's a good question. So, just like we talked about dreaming, if you look at any type, if you look into hypnosis or self-hypnosis or guided meditation, some people believe that you're in a trance or out of a trance, and then other people believe that there are many levels of trance. And I think that's a much more useful way to approach it, that you're in some sort of trance all the time. And it just depends on whether that trance is going to be useful to you. If being in a certain type of trance is going to let in new information that's going to be useful, or if you need to change the type of trance so you're not letting in information that's not useful to you. But another way that you can, another technique that you can use to get you into the state more often is a process called anchoring, where you basically like attach a button to the feeling. So you can do this by tapping. Tapping is one of those things, you focus on a state and you tap, 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 or, you can fire off the Tony Robbins anchor, or you can use what's called a trance word, like sleep is a trance word, right? For example. But the way that, for me, what I use to get me into these states more is I just practice being in them more often. So not only do I sit down to do meditation and to induce, I'll transfer that trance state, that feeling, into other things like body movements. So you can start with really simple things like walking or running. When I was younger, I studied a lot of martial arts, and obviously, if you know anything about martial arts, Bruce Lee was an iconic figure, and he would say in one of his movies, I don't hit, it hits all by itself, which presupposes that you've trained the mind and the body so much that it becomes an unconscious process. And so when the stimulus of an attacker comes towards you, the body just moves in a conditioned response almost, with the free will of being able to do the appropriate movement at the right time. And so the thinking mind isn't getting in the way. The body's just moving how it's trained to move, because that's how it knows what to do. And so it's putting trust in the body and the mind that it's already going into these states, that it already knows how to get there, and just to relax your way into them as often as possible. So the key thing here is focus and relaxation, and their skills. If you can focus on relaxing and relax into focus, then that's a really good combination, and you can intertwine those two states, those two skills together. And when you have that locked in, let's say we'll call that neutral, when you can find that neutral state, and that's trained in to the point where you can sit down, meditate, and within an hour you can drop into that state and hold it for as long as you can. Then once you know you can access it from there, just a matter of transferring it to the next thing, transferring it to the next thing. And so what I like to do with my personal meditations is I don't like to come out of them. I like to just continue them through into whatever I'm doing that day. So just like, to give you a bit more specifics, instead of me saying, all right, slowly relax, slowly, calmly come out, come back to your body, come back to this time, this space, this place, and then when you're ready, open your eyes. You just realize that when you're in that state, you become really lucid. Then you just open your eyes and you begin to move and take that state with you. Now, I don't recommend you do that and go off to work and drive in your car and operate machinery, because you're a little bit in this abstract kind of mindset, and that's not useful. But if it's like a Sunday morning and all you're going to do is go out and maybe go for a run or have breakfast, whatever, get into that state like before you get out of bed, and take it into the shower with you, and then have a really nice shower, feeling all those feelings, and then get yourself dressed in that state, and then leave the house in that state. Go for your run or go for breakfast or whatever you have to do, and just see, don't try to hold on to it, but just ride the wave as long as you can. And so one last thing, and then we'll end it there, unless there's any more questions. But there was a great documentary just recently released called "Take Every Wave" by with Laird Hamilton, the surfing legend, and the guys, all these surf iconic characters. They were talking about his approach to surfing, and they were like, he would just surf everything. He would surf every wave, and he wouldn't care if he got wiped out, or if he ate it, or if he had this really good tube, or if, he'd just catch everything, and he would ride everything. And so if you can take these states and these emotions and ride them, whatever they are, don't get all biased and like, this is a good state and this is a bad state. There's a good feeling and that's a bad feeling. I should be feeling this, I shouldn't be feeling that. If you just relax, practice relaxing into everything, and it's not easy, believe me, and it's not fun sometimes. And some states you want to last even longer than they do. But if you can just practice focus and relaxation and integrate it and transfer it into everything that you do as often as you can, then pretty soon you're going to start seeing these little seedlings pop up everywhere in your life. And you're going to start to see this forest of relaxation and focus growing. And from there, once you get that base, then you can grow anything you like in there, because there's so much nutrients going in there, so much energy going in there. And it doesn't take a lot of time looking back through time to see your progress. Having said that, though, while you're in it doing it, it feels like you're not getting anywhere. But that's just how it is. Sometimes you got to look over your shoulder and see how far you've come. But I hope does that answer the question? Does that help? I hope that's useful to you. And is there any last questions before we close today, wherever you are? Yeah, and just take your time, like just little by little, like just cast seeds out, just throw them out. There's a really great, beautiful short film called The Man Who Grew Trees. If I find it, I'll put it up on the Facebook Energetic Arts community group. And just about a man who, planted trees for decades and in a barren desert, and all of a sudden over many, many years, there's this beautiful forest that he created. And any last questions before we wrap up? Oh, you're most welcome. Thank you. Here's a little experiment. This is something that's fun. When you can get into those states without saying anything and without trying to push it onto anyone, just by being in that state, just notice in your interactions if it's transferring to other people in your environment and in your reality. Just little thing to play with. All right, guys, thank you very much for attending. I really appreciate you chiming in, and I'm really happy to do this for you guys, and hope to see you next week. And until then, have a good time, and take the feelings with you. All right, guys, thanks. See you later. Bye.